Hey deal, welcome back. Before we jump into the next part of our story, I want to remind you to check out part 1 if you haven't yet. Trust me, to help you understand how Ndubuisi went from a simple village life to living large to unimaginable wealth, but at a huge cost. In part 1, we saw Hodima's sad journey caught up in Ndubuisi's sneaky schemes. But will Ndubuisi's luxurious lifestyle continue, or will his evil deeds catch up to him? Get comfy because things are about to get even more intense. The night had become unbearable for Ndubuisi. Once he had slept soundly, surrounded by the soft luxury of his silken sheets. His body cushioned by the extravagance his wealth had afforded him. But now, sleep was his enemy. It was no longer a refuge but a battlefield where he was tormented by faces he couldn't escape. Visions that gnawed at his very soul. Every time he closed his eyes, Odima appeared bloated, swollen, grotesque. His stomach, grotesquely distended, seemed to taunt on the beasts with its unnatural size. And those eyes, hollow with accusation, pierced him like daggers, leaving him breathless with guilt. But it wasn't just Odima. Each night, more faces emerged from the shadows. Men, women, children, those he had barely remembered, crowded his dreams. Their eyes vacant yet filled with silent rage. They were the ones sacrificed in the pursuit of wealth. Their souls now haunting him relentlessly. Every whisper carried the weight of condemnation. Every crime was a reminder of the price he had paid for the riches he once flaunted. The nightmares were relentless, like a tide he couldn't escape, drawing him over and over in his guilt. No matter how much alcohol he consumed or how many pills it took to numb the fear, the dead found him. They always found him. Ndubuisi was unraveling. The powerful arrogance who once runs his life with confidence now wandered through his mansion like a lost soul, jumping at every flickers of light, every shadow that danced in the corners of his vision. The mansion, once his palace, now felt like a prison. Its walls closing around him, trapping him with the ghost of his past. His friends, those who had been drawn to him like moths to a flame, began to distance themselves. They whispered behind his back, speaking of his strange behavior, the sleepless nights, the madness creeping into his eyes. They called him cursed. And Ndubuisi deep down knew they were right. The words that had once defined him, the riches that had given him power, now felt like chains. Chains that bound him to something dark, something he could no longer control. You could feel it in the air, the way the shadows moved just out of sight, and the whisper that followed him even in daylight. Someone was coming for him. In his growing desperation, Ndubuisi knew there was only one man who could stop the nightmares, who could free him from the torment that was driving him insane. Dikeogu. The name lingered in his mind like a lifeline, a thread of hope in the suffocating darkness. If anyone could undo the cause that now plagued him, it was the old herbalist. Without hesitation, Ndubuisi set off for the village of Umizi, where Dikeogu had his shrine deep within the forest. The drive was long, the road windy and treacherous, but Ndubuisi drove with a single-minded focus. When he finally arrived at the shrine, dread settled over him like a heavy strode. The once mighty shrine, filled with vibrant symbols of power, was now a hoax of its former self. Ndubuisi heart sank as he called out for Dikeogu, but the only response was the rustle of the trees and the silence that followed. Dikeogu was gone. An elder passing by broken that shrine confirmed Ndubuisi's worst fear. Dikeogu is dead. The old man whispered, his voice carrying a hint of fear. He died weeks ago. Some say it was the cause he tried to control that took him. Ndubuisi's stomach turned to the reality sinking in. The man who had heard the answer, who had given him the wealth, was gone. The person who could save him from the nightmare was no longer alive. As the day passed, the nightmare only grew worse. All the mass hollow eyes stared at him with increasingly intensity, but now there were more. They came in droves, The men, the women, the children, the people whose life had been sacrificed for his wealth, were no longer just silent. At first, their whispers were faint, like a distant wind, but soon they grew louder. Accusations, condemnations, crying for justice. Ndubuisi, they called, their voice blending into a terrible chorus. Ndubuisi, your time is near. The weight of their words crushed him, made it impossible for him to sleep. Impossible to think. He would spend hours pressing the hall of his mansion, mumbling to himself, jumping at the slightest sound. He became paranoid, convinced that the shadows in the corner were watching him, waiting for their moment to strike. He needed help. But with Dikeogu dead, where would he turn? Who else would save him from the curse? In his desperation, Ndubuisi returned to Umueze, hoping to find anyone who might have known Dikeogu or have similar power. Anyone who could help him. The villagers were weary of him, their eyes filled with suspicion and fear. They had heard the rumors of his wealth, of the sacrifice made in the pursuit of it. But then an old woman, her back bent with age, approached him. You see Dikeogu? She said softly, her voice filled with the weight of years, but he's gone. What you need now is not Dikeogu, but his son. Ndubuisi stared at her, confusion flickering across his face. Dikeogu's son, Kolo. The woman continued. He walked alongside his father, cutting ties, learning his ways. But now is a prophet. A man of God dressed in white garments. He has taken his father's knowledge and combined it with the ways of the church. He lives from far here in a village known for miracles. Kolo. The name sent a shiver down Ndubuisi's spine. Could it be true? Could this man, the son of Dikeogu, be the key to ending his suffering? With no other options left, Ndubuisi set off again, the road ahead filled with uncertainty. When Ndubuisi finally arrived at Kolo's village, he was met with a sight that left him breathless. The streets were filled with people, some kneeling, some crying, all waiting for their chance to meet the man they called the prophet. Even white men dressed in expensive suits waited patiently for his blessing. Kolo was dressed in a flowing white garment, his face serene, his eyes calm and piercing. He moved through the crowd with an air of authority, his hand raised in prayer, his voice deep and commanding. The people spoke of miracles, healing, deliverance, wealth restored. But as Ndubuisi watched from the shadows, he felt a familiar darkness lurking beneath the surface. There was something about Kolo, something that reminded him of Dikeogu. Beneath it lay a power as dark and twisted as the one that had once bound Ndubuisi to Dikeogu's ritual. It took 2 days of waiting in a long queue to finally see Kolo. The prophecy was not like Ndubuisi had expected. Kolo's presence seemed to command reverence from all who sought his counsel. The church was a grand, whitewashed structure bustling with people, rich and poor alike. Even white men had come from foreign countries, eager to receive his blessings. The air was thick with the heavy scent of incense, blended with the sound of hymns that echoed through the hall. Ndubuisi stood in the shadow, watching as Kolo moved among the crowd. There was an aura of holiness that clung to him. Kolo's eyes landed on Ndubuisi, and for a moment the two men stared at each other in silence. Then Kolo's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. Tell me your story, Kolo said, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. Ndubuisi, worn from sleepless night and haunted by his past, poured out his confession. He spoke of Dikeogu's rituals, the ways he had obtained through sacrifice, and the nightmare that now plagued him, visions of tormented figures and the faces of those he had sacrificed for his fortune. He detailed his desperate search for a solution, the many herbalists who had turned him away, and the cause that seemed to grip him tighter with each passing day. Kolo listened intently, nodding slowly as the tale unfolded. His expression remained impassive, but something was unsettling in the way his eyes seemed to gleam as Ndubuisi spoke. When Ndubuisi finished, Kolo's serene smile returned. My father, Dikeogu, was a powerful man, he began, his voice low and measured. but his ways were rooted in a path tied to a darkness that even you could not fully control. You are feeling the weight of that darkness now. Ndubuisi's stomach twisted with dread. He had feared this, that Dikeogu's ritual had unleashed so melting he could never escape. But Kolo continued, his tone softening. There is hope. The ways of my father are outdated. I have learned to transit them, to combine his knowledge with the light of the ministry. He paused, letting his words sink in. I can cleanse you of the cords that bind you, but it will not be easy. Ndubuisi leaned forward, desperate for salvation. I will do anything, whatever it takes, I will do it. Kolo's eyes locked onto his, and the smile faded from his lips. To free yourself from your father's curse, you must be reborn. For 3 days you will lie in the coffin, just as your soul lies now in the grave. This is your only chance for redemption. On the 3rd day, we will revive you, and you will emerge free from the shadows of your past. Ndubuisi felt a cold chill run down his spine. A coffin? He whispered, his voice trembling. Kolo nodded. Your soul is already out in the grave, my brother. This is the only way to bring it back. But there is a cost. Once you are reborn, you must leave behind the life you knew. The riches, the power, the indulgence, they will no longer be yours. You will join me here in the ministry and serve. Only through this path can you continue to live. Ndubuisi hesitated. The weight of Kolo's word pressed down on him. He had already lost so much. His extravagant lifestyle, his peace of mind, even his friends. The man he had once been was already slipping away, replaced by someone desperate and broken. If this was the only way to stop the nightmare, then he had no choice. I would do it, Ndubuisi said, his voice barely above a whisper. Kolo smiled. Good. The coffee will be prepared tomorrow night. In 3 days, you will rise again, free of course. As the cool night wrapped around him, Ndubuisi couldn't shake the feeling that something about Kolo's promise was wrong. The prophet had offered salvation, but at what cost? 3 days. Ndubuisi clung to the hope that in 3 days the torment would end and it would be free. The night of the ritual was eerie. The child has been cleared of its usual crowd, and Ndubuisi found himself alone with Kolo and a few of the prophet's trusted followers. A wooden coffin laying in the center of the room, its lid open, waiting for him. Ndubuisi's stomach churned with fear as he climbed inside. The wood felt cold against his skin, and as Kolo's follower lowered the lid, darkness engulfed him. The air was thick and still, and Ndubuisi could hear his own heartbeat sounding loudly in his ears. For 3 days, he leaned in the coffin, his mind racing. He could hear the faint sound of prayers and chants from outside, but inside it was silent. Though he ate nothing, the willingness to finally have a good sleep was more important. On the 3rd day, the lid was lifted, and Ndubuisi emerged from the coffin, weak and disoriented, but alive. The weight that had pressed on his soul seemed lighter, and the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope. You are reborn, Kolo said, his voice filled with reverence. Now you're one of us. Welcome to the ministry. Ndubuisi had entered Kolo's ministry with the faith hope that he had escaped his past, but as the day passed, he realized that his new life was merely another kind of prison, albeit cloaked in the false righteousness of religion. The church, which presented itself as a place of healing and redemption, was in fact a web of deceit, greed, and lust, an extension of the dark powers Kolo had inherited from his father. From the outside, the ministry flourished. Others flocked to the church daily, seeking miracles, blessing, and solutions to their problems. Kolo played the role of the benevolent prophet well. His followers, dressed in flowing white garments, sang praises to Kolo as he claimed to be the God they've come to meet. As part of Kolo's inner circle, Ndubuisi was given privileges that were both dangerous and tempting. Kolo, fully aware of Ndubuisi's past, encouraged him to indulge in the same vices that had once ruled his life. Women, married, single, and even devout, flocked to the church, their faith manipulated by Kolo's promise. And Kolo, in his twisted benevolence, granted Ndubuisi the freedom to take away women he desired, just as he had in the clubs of Ashaba. The night in the church became a wide reflection of his own life, only worse. By the day, Kolo and his ministers preached the salvation. But by night, the church was filled with whispered saints. Women were invited to special prayer sessions, but those sessions often devolved into secret affairs and lustful trusts. Married women, even wives of powerful men, were not spared, drawn in by the halo of Kolo's power. Some came willingly, others reluctantly, but all fell victim to the twisted game being played within the church walls. Ndubuisi wants the spirit to escape the curse that haunted him, found himself slipping back into old habits. His new life was cloaked in holiness, hidden behind the facade of religion, and he participated, blinded by temptation. Ndubuisi had learned to navigate this treacherous landscape, careful not to draw too much attention to himself, but everything began to unravel when Ndubuisi set his sights on the king's daughter, Princess Amaka. Amaka was young, beautiful, and fiercely intelligent. She had been sent to Kolo's ministry by the king himself, who believed in Kolo's supposed power to protect his daughter from any spiritual harm. But instead, she was drawn to Ndubuisi's dangerous charm. The two began to flirt discreetly at first, exchanging glances during prayer sessions and speaking in huge tongue after the church evening services. What began as an innocent filtration quickly escalated. They began meeting in secret. At night, where the church was silent, Ndubuisi would sneak Amaka into his private quarters, and their affair grew more intense with each passing week. But what they shared, no matter how truly, was dangerous. And if the king found out, the consequence would be catastrophic. Despite the risk, Ndubuisi couldn't stop. He was addicted to the danger, to the thrill of having something he knew we shouldn't. The night they spent together were filled with passion, but as with everything in Ndubuisi's life, the illusion of control was fleeting. He was playing with fire, and it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. The truth finally came to light when Amaka discovered she was pregnant. The news hit the village faster than the evening Harmattan breeze. Ndubuisi, with all his confidence and charm, had made the worst mistake of his life. He had crossed the line no one dared to cross. He had gotten the king's only daughter pregnant. At first, it had been whispered, gossip that filtered through the market stalls, the women selling fish and tomatoes exchanging glances, chuckling behind their hands. Did you hear? Ndubuisi, that sharp guy, the one from the city, has put Amaka in a family way. The shock and disbelief quickly turned into disbelief. Even the old men sitting under the iroko tree couldn't resist shaking their heads, muttering in low voices but about how this generation had no respect. When the news finally reached the king, there was no chuckling. The king, a man known for his sweet temper and iron grip on his household, was livid. His daughter was supposed to marry a prince, not some smooth-talking hustler from the city who made his fortune on the back of others. By the time the king's rage cooled enough to speak, he had already given a command to his royal guard, burn that church to the ground. He roared, and arrest that fake prophet, Kolo, and every person hiding under that deceitful roof. Find Ndubuisi, I want him brought to me alive or dead. That night, the guards moved like shadows, their torches lighting up the darkened streets as they descended upon Kolo's grand church, a structure that had become infamous for its secret dealings. The church, with its high walls and flashing lights, had once stood as a beacon of power, but tonight it would crumble. The moment the first torch was thrown, the dry wood caught fire, and the flames began to rise, licking at the walls like a hungry beast. Panic spread inside the church. Those who had come for healings and miracles suddenly found themselves running for their lives, their faith replaced with terror. Kolo, the self-proclaimed prophet, was dragged from his chamber, kicking and screaming, his flowing white garment now smeared with ash and dirt. "Mercy, mercy," he cried. But the king's guard had no ears for his pleas. They had their orders and they followed them to the letter. Amidst the chaos, Ndubuisi, always one to think fast, made his escape. While everyone was busy trying to salvage what they could, he slipped through the back of the church, disappearing into the thick bushes behind the compound. His heart pounded as he ran, the glow of the burning church still visible in the distance. It wasn't until he reached the edge of the forest that he stopped, panting and drenched in sweat. He had managed to flee with nothing but a prayer on his lips that the king's milk wouldn't catch up to him. For the next days, Ndubuisi lived like a rat, sneaking around, hiding in uncompleted buildings, and scavenging whatever food he could find. The once proud man who had chewed clubs with bottles of champagne now dug through trash cans, praying no one would recognize him. His nights were cold and long. He would lie on the concrete floor staring at the cracked ceiling and think back to the days when his biggest worry was which expensive car to drive to a party. Now he was just trying to stay alive. The nightmares, the ones that had haunted him for so long, had stopped. All the masked bloated face no longer appeared in his dreams, and the wailing souls of the sacrifice no longer screamed in his ears. But this silence wasn't comforting. If anything, it was worse. It was as if the universe had taken a deep breath, waiting for the next calamity to strike. One hot afternoon, Ndubuisi found himself wandering through a bustling town market. His stomach growled painfully and his throat was dry from lack of water. He eyed a pile of roasted yam, the vendor distracted as he argued with a customer. Ndubuisi had never stolen a day in his life, but hunger can make even the worst honorable man to do dishonorable things. His finger twitched, his eye darted around to make sure no one was watching. He grabbed the yam and ran. He didn't get far. A shout went up, "Thief! Thief! Thief!" Market women, with their strong arms and sharper tongues, were on him before he had even reached the corner. They grabbed him, their voices rising in a cacophony of curses. One woman yanked the yam from his hand and smacked him across the head. Another grabbed a stick, preparing to deliver what would ever be the beating of his life. Just as the crowd was about to descend on him, a voice cut through the chaos. "Wait! Leave him alone!" A man stepped forward, his presence commanding respect. His clothes, though simple, were well tailored, and there was an air of authority about him. Kano, the man who had saved Ndubuisi from the mob, was a wealthy trader from Oguta, the same village Ndubuisi had grown up in. The irony wasn't lost on Ndubuisi. Here he was, being saved by a man from his past, just when he thought all hope was lost. Ndubuisi, bruised and humiliated, looked up at Kano, a spark of hope flickering in his very heart. But deep down, he couldn't help but wonder if this was truly a twist of fate or if something darker was waiting for him just around the corner. Stay tuned for the next chapter in this gripping tale of greed, betrayal, and survival. With Ndubuisi saved from the brink of death, what lies ahead for him? Will he finally escape the consequences of this action? Or is his punishment far from over? Part 3 is coming soon. Subscribe to Savanna Storytime so you won't miss it.